Welcome to another episode of the Religion Law Podcast, where you learn about religious freedom and other religion law related topics through a short question and answer format. I'm your host, Michael Fielding. Let's see how you do on today's quiz. Welcome to Religion Law Quiz number 56, numero 56. We learned in Religion Law Quiz number 55 that the Supreme Court's 1947 decision in Everson versus Board of Education of Ewing incorporated the Establishment Clause to the states. And so after that occurred, the Supreme Court was hit with a variety of lawsuits dealing with difficult Establishment Clause issues, because now it suddenly applies to the states. And so there's obviously all these state laws and state practices, and everybody's saying, hey, does that violate the Establishment Clause? And so obviously those decisions over time percolated up to the Supreme Court. And as courts are wont to do, and I say want as W-O-N-T, as courts are wont to do, after a while the Supreme Court developed a test based on its prior decisions to address Establishment Clause issues. And the question for you is, what was the decision that adopted the test, and what are the elements of the test? What's the answer? Well, just this will be the way you will remember it. When I was a kid, I would when I'd go to church, the bishop where I would go, he had a candy jar on his desk. And you'd open up the candy jar, and he had sour lemon heads. And so we would be in there in meetings, and we'd all open up the candy jar, and we'd get these sour lemons and suck on them. And that's a good way to remember it, kind of puckering up as you're sucking on something sour. Well, that's the way to remember the answer to this quiz, which is it's called the lemon test. And the test was enunciated. The decision is called Lemon v. Kurtzman, a 1971 Supreme Court decision. And I'm going to quote here from the Supreme Court, and this quote is coming from the Supreme Court's 2019 American Legion decision. I'll have the citations in the show note. Quote, under the lemon test, a court must ask whether a challenged government action, 1, has a secular purpose, 2, has a principal or primary effect that neither advances nor inhibits religion, and 3, does not foster an excessive government entanglement with religion, close quote. Now, here is a really important takeaway here, and that is the lemon test is now dead. There was the Supreme Court decision in, I believe it was 2022, Kennedy versus the Bremerton School District, or City of Bremerton. And that dealt with Coach Kennedy, the football coach. The case went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court made it clear in that decision that this lemon test was dead. And frankly, when you read that decision, the Supreme Court makes it sound like the lemon test had been dead for quite some time. I think the problem is there were a lot of practitioners throughout the country that still thought the lemon test was still alive and valid. And at any rate, the reason this is so important is this 3-part lemon test, which quite candidly, I think everybody would say it's kind of nebulous at times. That really, really impacted these Establishment Clause decisions for really about 50 years, from 1971 to really 2022. This was the big test that people were always looking at and wrestling with. So what are the practical takeaways from today's quiz? This is 2 in a row where I'm kind of striking out here, because somebody's going to say, hey, I'm just a layperson, I'm a run-of-the-mill person, I'm not going to deal with Establishment Clause issues. And you know what? You're probably right. And so then you're saying, well, why are you wasting my time with this quiz? And The answer to this is in the jurisprudence. This has been a pretty big deal for 50 years, and part of becoming educated is knowing the road that we have been on, and frankly, the road that has now been jettisoned, a different course that has been taken. And so we then would look to more modern decisions, such as the Coach Kennedy decision, the Bremerton decision, to find out where or what the proper test is for Establishment Clause issues. All right, that's it for today's quiz. I hope to see you on the next Religion Law Quiz.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Remember, religion law quizzes are for educational purposes only and are not intended to be relied upon as legal advice. If you have found this episode to be helpful, please share it and leave a review. Until we meet again, keep being an influence for good.